have gotten this through your other courses at SDSU, but just so there's a foundation for everybody into painting theory that you can build off of. So some of it might be a repeat for some of you, but the other ones who haven't, this will be useful information. So some of the better, I would say, paints are some of these brands here that you can see, and some of these sets are good for beginners because there's variation in color. So if you're still new to actually blending colors yourself, if you haven't gone through like a color theory course, this is really good to help you get a variety of different colors without necessarily having to learn that blending technique until you get those skills kind of developed. They come in these big packs of 36, 48 Blick, and a lot of people from Standing Rock and around this area usually get their stuff at Hobby Lobby. I'm sure there's other places in other areas to get paint, but you can find some that are relatively affordable. But the packs that you have already blended are going to be more expensive. But for some of you who are looking to do more painting, you're going to want to, if you're from this region, go up to Hobby Lobby and look at the different sets and different packs and try to get something with a variety of color just to get you started. And once you've done that, I definitely recommend going through some videos to try to learn some color theory and try to blend your own colors. So that is our set. And then also, I mean, you're going to want a variety of brushes. I know that SDSU students probably already have this all down because you've been studying it. But for everybody else, you want a variety of decent brushes, thin and thicker for all the different components. And then if you're looking at like color and how to use color, your brighter colors are going to be more dominant and they're also going to be more heavy. So if you have a huge section that's red, it's really going to grab your attention and hold it there. And if that brighter, more intense primary color is at the top of your paper and it's on a large scale, it's going to make your painting look more top heavy. So it's important to think about what colors are being placed where on your canvas to prevent that from happening. And if you have, a red dot the size of this, it's going to have the same kind of visual weight as a section this big of a darker color, like a dark brown or a darker gray. So remember that, especially if you're trying to create hierarchy in your painting, if you want your audience to view one section first prior to viewing the other sections of your painting, think about those brighter colors, how you're going to place them and how they're going to draw in people's attention, and hopefully also what place they are so your painting is balanced. And then complementary colors, if you know what the color wheel looks like, or if you have your computer open, look at the color wheel and look at your complementary colors. They're going to be opposite from each other on the color wheel. And if you juxtapose those two together, it's going to really, really complement each other. It's going to look very, very nice. So think about what colors you're going to use and what color you're going to place. But if you're looking at, traditional colors, this is a really good book for especially some of you students, like an introduction to design patterns that you would typically see Lakota Dakota culture have and use, whether it be on par flesh or other raw hide artwork. It has a lot of different designs and also meanings to those designs. So a lot of times, especially with Lakota Dakota culture, it wasn't necessarily a design just to decorate a surface or a space. That design actually had meaning and meant something. And without, a course on this or some kind of books to go off of, you might not know what you're actually representing in your artwork. So if you look at this page here, you have all these different design components, and right next to them, you're going to have a definition of what that design means. And if you learn enough about this, when you see these design patterns being replicated either on like par flesh or on the side of a teepee or by another artist, whether it be on a contemporary, canvas surface or something like that, you'll actually know what they're representing through knowing what the designs are. So that's important to also know when you're looking at it, that those designs may have meaning. And this book is pretty good because it gives you a lot of information on different design patterns and what their meanings are. And then here are some traditional colors that you would have seen, whether it be on beadwork or quilling work or just colors in general. You have a light red, a light blue, a dark blue, a yellow, a tan, a green, a black, and a white. Those are going to be the kind of colors that were used typically in a lot of beadwork historically. Now, just because those colors are most common in older artwork doesn't necessarily mean you have to represent that in your own artwork. But if you want to, that would be a way in which you can reflect your culture in your painting through the use of the colors that you have. And then also, if you think of like the medicine wheel and the directions and the colors have meaning, and to other cultures, they're going to have different meaning depending on the culture that representing it. So red in Lakota, might be Luta, and it might be an indication that the artist is making of a sacred component, or a lot more emphasis on a certain spot on the canvas opposed to a different color. So it's important to know that, just like in Western culture, you see colors that have meanings, whether it be pink and blue associated with boy and a girl. Also, cultures have colors that mean certain things. So it's important to look at that when you're going to put that on your canvas. So think about it. If you are a Native American artist and you're thinking about putting different colors on it, also think that colors can have meanings, and you can say a lot just with the colors that you use on your canvas.
So are there any colors or like patterns you're not supposed to use?
Not that I know of. There very well could be patterns that you might not want to use. There's a lot of different patterns that you might find on the internet that are just generic patterns that might not necessarily be a tribal pattern, but like a generated pattern that you see in a lot of like fashion and clothing and things like that. I think it's most important, depending on what tribe you're from, what culture you are, to research those patterns and what's best where you are, and who you are and where you're from. So if you do have an elder that knows a lot, and you're thinking about making like a large work that's going to be seen by a lot of people, I would definitely maybe show them first and see if they know anything else about the patterns. A lot of these patterns here, they'll give you their meaning, and you can kind of indicate through that whether or not it's an appropriate pattern to use, if it's a sacred pattern or something like that, and you're going to indicate it on a contemporary painting. You might get criticism because of that. Like if you look at the artist Oscar Howe, who made a lot of geometric patterns and designs, he got a lot of criticism by both native and non-native alike for saying that his artwork wasn't traditional enough. But then through like his understanding of the culture and designs and the geometric patterns, he explained where that actually originated from. And through that, it helped his audience understand that his artwork is very Native American, even though to the novice eye or somebody who doesn't know the culture very, very well, wouldn't necessarily know that those geometric design patterns are originating from his culture, or not, like a Western culture. So things like that, especially with contemporary art, there can be components of controversy. Especially when people look at it, they might not say that it's traditional enough, or that it's on such a modern surface that they might not look at it as traditional Native American art. However, the way I conceptualize it is, if you look at beadwork, or you look at like a drumstick and ichabu, fiberglass, you have electrical tape a lot of times, or acrylic paint painted on it. All those materials are very modern, but produce a historical, traditional piece of Native American art. And most people today would view that as traditional art. A chabu, even though the materials have evolved. Even with ledger art, if you look at ledger art, and for those of you from SDSU that might not know anything about ledger art, I definitely recommend researching it, because that, for somebody who has never seen ledger art or studied it, you might look at that and say, might think that it's not traditional Native American art because it's on ledger paper, it uses colored pencils, it uses Sharpie markers. But since knowing where that originated from hides traditional artwork designs just on a new medium, because of all the horrible history that impacted during that time, you see those traditional aspects evolving to adapt to the situation on a modern sheet of paper with colored pencils. So knowing where it originates from is important, and also how long it's been a part of the culture to look at it as this is traditional art because you know where it comes from, you know? And same now we're seeing that with canvas, painting, things like that, where more people are, I think, becoming accepting this modern application of it because they know where it originates from and tracing it back. So it's hard to explain a lot of that. I mean, it's complicated, a lot of that history, you know, and stuff like that, but it's important to know that art can evolve onto new mediums, new surfaces. And as long as you are a Native American artist or, you know, producing things from who you are, you know, it's going to reflect that tradition regardless of the surface that it's on, you know. And you see a lot of contemporary Native American paintings now being made that are amazing, that have cultural components that are relevant, and also a reflection of culture today, which is important. So with saying that, I guess I'll segue into this next part. These are some images, and you can look at a lot of different images and representations. And I'm going to show you one by an old student that I had. That was one of my students in McLaughlin that I taught, that I had about 5-6 years ago. And it can kind of show you these different cultural components and how they're being applied onto a canvas. And if you look at it, you know, if you look at ledger art, I'll always go back to ledger art because there's common like design characteristics that you would have seen from a hide painting to ledger art. And then also now what you're seeing on canvases is a lot of times you won't have a horizon line like what you're taught probably at the School of Design, creating depth concept in a two-dimensional surface is going to be different than, you know, a lot of Western paintings where you have like a linear perspective that's embedded or some kind of plane space that your images rest on, right? That indicates your horizon, your foreground, your background. A lot of times what you'll see with ledger art and also paintings today is images that don't have that, but will be more or less kind of floating on your canvas and also be representing an actual thing that has happened. So it isn't just a decoration that looks good in a living room. The art had historical significance a lot of times. So it'd be indicating an event that already happened or a scene. So a lot of times, especially with old ledger art, without the training of that piece of art or the event that's happening, or the cultural components of how things were laid out, a lot of times, you know, people would hang the picture the wrong way, not knowing that it's actually supposed to be this way, depending on the scene and somebody who actually knew what happened to determine how your actual canvas, or in that case, ledger art, would be actually hung up on a wall or intended for the person to view. So even things like that on nowadays, you know, the impact that the written language has on the way we view a visual two-dimensional surface is significant because it's changed the way that we look at something that's hanging on the wall. I mean, we're going to read it a lot of times, you know, top down or left to right without actually knowing how it would have been viewed historically when it was made, you know? So if you think about that and you think about what you're making on your canvas, you know, there could be a lot of different ways in which you intend to have it be viewed, which would have been, or which could be, you know, really, really significant and unique to your work. So with saying that, and also kind of showing you some of those examples, and it's hard to exactly, you know, tell you what contemporary Native American art is because it's so all encompassing and it so relates to so many different mediums that one can use. So what we're kind of looking at for today is maybe more of a non-representative abstract expressionism design. So if you look at Native American art that heavily influenced some of the biggest art movements in the 20th century, look at Cubism. Cubism was really much influenced by Plains Native American geometric design patterns and also by African geometric design patterns that influenced this huge art movement in the 20th century, you know, just westernized, you know, but that's where it originally came through with that use of symbolism in multiple ways in which one object can be viewed. And then also you have abstract expressionism, which was an art movement started here in America. And I forget where I read it, but they said the first abstract expressionist artists were Native American females, because a lot of their artwork, whether it be on historical ledger art or just the artwork that would be done, you know, the cultural components that would be done on other aspects, whether it be bead or quill work, were those same components just being applied now to a canvas. So if you knew that, it's no surprise that abstract expressionism started here in America, because that's where you saw this geometric design patterns, these symbolism, these interpreting colors, lines, and shapes with feelings, moods, and expressions, right? So it's based off of the same premises, just again, in a modern application, and without knowing that, you might not know where it actually originates from. So with saying that, I'll segue over to this painting back here. Is this portable? Can we move this?
Yeah, I'm just typing everybody's emails.
Okay.
But I can finish later.
Okay. Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So we're moving now. So this is a really amazing painting that was done by a student of mine when I was in McLaughlin School, Frankie Janice. That was, I think, about 7 years ago, 7 years ago. And what we have here is a mixed median painting using acrylic. I believe there's pastel chalks, if anybody has ever gotten into pastel charcoals before, and then also India inks. And this artist, especially at this time that he was making these whole series of this, he really used mixed median techniques and used a lot of Indian ink first before applying any acrylic paint. And he made a lot of series. And I think he really, at this time, I don't know what kind of medium he uses now, but at this time, he really was inspired by these pigments and really produced a lot of amazing artwork. So you have something cultural significant. He is a tribal member here on Standing Rock Reservation, and he has, you know, his main images of Sitting Bull here. And what he did with this work too is he put it on his back canvas, so it's slightly raised from the background, which reads really well for the symbolic spiritual component. I think that he was trying to indicate through this, also through his use of colors. And also notice, okay, his background colors are more muted, right? He has darker blues, darker greens that have less intensity, but you see this this kind of yellowish reddish shirt being worn that really protrudes out and kind of creates the hierarchy that grabs your attention. And also a Sitting Bull being raised off the back of the canvas puts extra emphasis on the main image of the work. And then through the use of like dots gives it kind of this, I don't know, when I view it, I look at kind of, it feels kind of like this spiritual component, like stars up above kind of falling down to the earth. And then you have this raised up image of Sitting Bull, right? Amazing different shading coloristics here. Now, if you would look at a lot of older like ledger art and stuff like that, you would have, you know, solid colors that would be on there. You know, solid color, solid color, solid color, and there wouldn't be necessarily as much shading and creating variation. So the images would almost look very stylized with a two-dimensional aspect opposed to being three-dimensional, looking like they're popping off the canvas. But even though he didn't do a tremendous amount of shading, like on the t-shirt, there's a lot of detail on the face of Sitting Bull. And then also with that main, you know, component being raised off the back makes it stand out without having to do that through the shading and creating a three-dimensional, you know, shade variation to make it pop more. So this is, I think, you know, a really amazing piece of art that he produced during this time. And he's a tribal member here on Standing Rock Reservation. And this is one artwork that we have here at Sitting Bull College in the conference room. And I thought it'd be great to kind of showcase some examples of actual contemporary Native American art from the area. So that is a really amazing piece. And something to think about when you're creating your own artwork too, is that you can create mixed median, you can create different design elements depending on how you want to represent what you're trying to represent. Okay, we move it back. So now I'm going to get into the actual application of your artwork. Now, if you're creating something that's more geometric, I definitely recommend using tape. I use tape to outline. So if you're looking at a canvas, and let's say you have a geometric design pattern that you want to represent, tape like this works really well, especially if you're trying to get clean, crisp lines. And especially if you're going to try to create something that looks more pop art or something really clean like beading work, you're going to want to use something like this, unless you have a very steady hand. But the end result is just beautiful. And depending on what you want those lines to look like, after you take them off, you might want to put a coat underneath first. So with saying that, I don't know if anybody has any design elements that you want to represent or how you think that your piece of art will look. You can go with common geometric design patterns. And I have a good handout too that we use for beadwork and Parfleche and also ledger art. Like this. These are common design patterns that you would see around here. There's going to be definitely different design patterns, North Minnesota, Ojibwe. You know, there's a lot of different design patterns. So it all depends on who you are and what you want to represent as an artist. But think about that, or even if you want to create something where it's on canvas, but it looks more like a piece of ledger art. I always make stencils first, because if you're trying to do multiple scenes within a same canvas, it's really good to actually have a stencil that you can use to give you an idea of shape so you can represent it on an even scale throughout your work. And then other than that, so this is what I did just now really quickly to kind of show you what that looks like after you're done applying the tape. If you grabbed a kit, hopefully you had a roll of tape in there. If you did it, there's more up here, so you can come back and get more if you're local and you want to do this. And one thing that's important, especially when you're looking at creating something, so this is kind of what I worked off of right here. And when you look at it, at putting it on a canvas, it's important to think about how you're going to put it on the canvas. So if you look at like a lot of geometric design patterns are what's the word? They're symmetrical, right? But a lot of times, especially on contemporary paintings, you'll have asymmetry, which is something that looks really good on a two-dimensional surface on a wall or something like that, you know, which basically means that it's going to be off-centered a little bit, right? So you don't want your hierarchy to be smack dab in the middle of your canvas. A lot of times you want it to be off-centered, right? So even with this, and especially if you look at photography and you get into photography and you look at professional photography, a lot of times they'll show you something without showing you everything, right? And I think that's important, especially for the engagement on a work of art is you want to see something, but you don't want to be told what it is. You want to infer what the meaning is, or to imagine what the rest of it would look like. So a lot of times, you know, especially with photography, they might not show you the entire chair, but they're going to show you like a quarter of a bottom leg of a chair, right? Because it just reflects more depth and more imagination to what the rest of the room or the space look like. So you can take something like this, create it more asymmetrically by off-centering your frame, so you only get a glimpse of the actual design. And then depending on what part you want them to view first, you're going to start thinking about your colors that you're actually going to use. Does anybody have any questions so far? Is everybody still good? You still with me? Good? Yeah? Okay. So once you've done that, or once you know what you're going to actually represent on your two-dimensional surface on your canvas, you're going to lay it out. If you're not going to do tape and you're going to outline what it's going to look like, I recommend really lightly designing it first prior to applying your paint. And if you're new to paint, thinner first until heavy later, right? If you apply a thick application of paint, it's going to be harder for you then to go over that, especially you're not going to be able to go over that with a thinner amount of paint where it's more diluted, more water. So it's better to first go light with more water, depending on if you're using oils, or you're going to use more oil than pigment, or more water mixture to your acrylic. And what we handed out here is acrylic paint. Acrylic paint works really nice. It dries fast, unlike oils. Oils, you can go back a week later and still, work it, and it's still good. So, and then these are India inks too. And this is kind of what that painting over there by Frankie used here. These are India inks, and these work great, and they're really light for an undercoat. So if you're going to do some kind of mixed media, you might want to apply these paints first. And we do have these up at the site, and a little goes a long ways with these paints. So this would work great for an undercoat, but if you do acrylic first, this isn't necessarily going to work on top of it. You're going to want to use this first, and then maybe through your outlining of your work, you're going to want to use your acrylic. So I'll give you time to either Google some images, or hopefully you already have an idea and you can start sketching it out. And then once you've kind of sketched it out, I'll give you about 5 minutes. I'm going to get my paints ready. Then we'll start painting, and I'll go over some basic painting techniques. Then after that, I'll give everybody a chance just to, work on your painting. I'll stay online, or you can work on your painting, throughout the rest of the night and throughout the weekend. But regardless, whatever you make, it'd be great if you could send a picture to Jen or at the visitor website, so we can kind of see what everybody created. So research, start generating some ideas. Hopefully those of you who are in the area, you grab some of the examples to kind of work off of, or I recommend definitely Googling it just to generate some ideas. Don't copy anything exact unless it's like a design pattern that you specifically want to represent. Okay, I want to get these paints ready. Can you see them? Is it their picture on there? Does it look like they're painting, or no?
Hold on.
Can everybody hear me? I don't know. You want to give me some feedback? Are you currently painting?
I'm not.
You're not? Okay.
I'm actually, this is Reagan, Derek.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Good. I didn't expect any of this. I haven't painted since high school, and it wasn't really anything I did seriously. I just kind of did it for fun. But after you gave us that the whole taping idea,
Yep.
I found a picture I had of some moccasins my grandma made, my dad's grandma made. So that's what I'm going off of. I'm using this tape to make a geometric design from my great grandma's beadwork.
That's amazing. That is awesome.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of moving slow.
Yeah, no, take your time. It takes a long time to do geometric work. You know, it seems like opposed to organic, you know, work where you really want to get the dimensions down correctly. And it's awesome because you'll have colors to work off of, you know, and your design already to work off of. When you use the tape, I'll give you a little hint. You're going to want to, I mean, it feels like you want to really stretch it out, right? And you don't want to do that because if you don't paint it right away and it takes a little time, that elasticity will stretch back and it'll pull all your lines off. So basically what you want to do when you're doing it is make sure it's just nice and smooth and taut, but not stretched out too far. And then place it down smooth and then definitely run your finger or even some kind of flat comb or something on it to make sure that it's all the way down. Because if it's not all the way down, you will get a little bit of paint that will seep through, but that's really easy to fix. But it, you know, it's not as hard as I just made it sound. Just something to think of when you're making your lines, when you're putting your lines down, like just flat, a little taut, not too stretched. And then make sure you, before you paint a section, I always run my finger back over all the line work to make sure that it's still down and then paint it. And then when it's all the way painted, then you want to start pulling your lines and let it dry first. If you pull it before it's dry, it has the ability to take out little chunks of paint. But if you wait for it to dry and then you pull it and pull it nice and slow and smooth, it's going to turn out really, really nice.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and we have plenty of paint up here too. So if you run out, just let Jen know and you can make it back up here and just grab some more. Even if we run out of it, it won't take much to order some more. For everybody else, I'm going to paint a little bit. And once I'm done with a section, I'll show everybody. And then even though I'll be pulling it off soon, you kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like.
You're on mute. Unless you're on mute on purpose, but
We can unmute it.
oh, sorry. I didn't know if you
No,
were
that's
talking
okay.
to us or not.
Yeah, no.
Can you say what kind of paint?
Yeah, this paint that I'm using right now is India ink, and it's more runny. And once it dries, you can really create a lot of colors within a section if you want it to be really busy, right? If you want it to be more solid when you get to painting, you know, especially Reagan, if you're painting sections and you want it to be like a solid color so it looks like, you know, beadwork where it's just really clean and crisp, you definitely want to try to paint your section more quickly and make sure you have enough of your paint mix to the color that you want. So you do an entire section at a time, because it's going to be very hard for you to mix that same color and then fill in the rest. And then when you're doing this, especially what else is nice with the actual tape is you can do a section quickly without having to worry about your lines being perfect. So you can get a really solid opaque section that's going to make it look really clean, almost like a graphic design image, you know. It all depends on kind of what you're going for as an artist, how you want to represent it. Did anybody else comment? Are they painting? Can you tell?
No, I don't know. Nobody's answered.
Oh, okay, nobody answered. And this is what it's going to look like. You know, I mean, it's not dry yet, but you can tell how thin this is. So you can still see your canvas on a section of it, but it works good, especially if you're going to layer, or if I'm going to let it dry and then add additional colors to get kind of like, make it appear more like a sky or something, almost like a watercolors. You know, watercolors work really good for, you know, making water scenes or the sky and things like that. So it's gonna be more transparent like that. And then I'm gonna show you what it looks like when you put a thicker application of paint on using acrylic. I don't know if anybody else has worked much with any other mediums, especially the students there from SDSU. If you had any experience or you're taking classes where you're kind of diving into different techniques, like if it's oils or acrylics, things like that. But eventually you're going to find a medium that you're going to like, and you're probably going to roll with for a while and do more with. And when you do, if you are new to painting, really basic techniques, the first thing that you're naturally going to do, but it's not correct, is you're going to want to hold it like a pencil, right? You're going to want to hold it down here and go like this. You definitely want to hold it further back than make larger motions, because it's going to be more fluid and more clean. And then two, when you put your paint on your brush, you're going to dip it on both sides, and you're going to want to get it on both sides. So when you do start painting like a section, let's say I'm going to paint here, eventually I'm going to run out of paint on the one side. Then I'm going to flip it over, and then I'm going to use the other side. And if you're trying to get a solid section painted, this is definitely kind of like the techniques to use. And if you never mixed colors before, you can let me know. I can go over that a little bit. I mean, that's a lot to kind of get into in a short amount of time, but I definitely recommend doing some blending, looking at a color wheel and trying to look at like your complementary colors, your secondary colors, also your colors that are going to be used to grab people's attention. All those same elements, they work across the board. You know, it's the same reason why McDonald's colors to their signs, or signs in general, are predominantly red or yellow or black or blue. You know, you have primary colors and you have very dominant colors, and they naturally grab our attention. And if you kind of go with those techniques too, you can use them to grab attention to certain areas of your painting, depending on what you want to see or what you want to put emphasis on or what you're trying to represent. Then if I want this thicker, I'm just going to let it dry and then put on a second application of paint, and then it's going to be even more solid yet. Okay, how long is it scheduled for an hour?
Wow.
For an hour, okay, yeah.
Or whenever you're done.
Yeah, no, I think we're working a little bit, and by that time it'll be perfect.
You have about 20 minutes left.
Yeah. So the,
Oh,
you know, that's
yeah.
with the, and then I don't have the, but it's a pattern I use for the ledger art. You know, that I'm just,
Okay.
you know, doing here, just so they can get kind of an idea of different techniques that you can use.
Are they working? Where's your pictures, guys?
Everybody's hiding. I don't know what's going on.
Oh, quit hiding now. No. Did everybody put their email addresses?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
I was saying-
awesome.
Too, it'd be great if they showed you pictures of what they completed too,
Yeah.
you know, just so we get an idea of what they've done.
They've been asking questions.
Reagan asked a couple questions, and that's been about it. I've asked them some questions, but everybody's pretty silent.
They're Bucky.
Being Bucky. Is the sun still out? Really?
It seemed like it got light early too today.
5:44 and the sun's still out.
Oh, you know, like when you drive on the Kennel Road and you pass like Sunshine's house and stuff, like,
Uh-huh.
and you dip down and it comes back up, and there's that pasture with the trees right next to it.
Uh-huh.
Last week, I saw a herd of elk over there.
Really?
Yeah, I've never seen elk that far down before.
I've
you
just
know,
seen
like,
them up in this area.
yeah,
Never-
I'm like,
Really?
yeah, there's like 30 of them,
Can you
and there's
hand me
like 4 with
We need some
an
meat.
actual, yeah, racks and
We'll
everything.
do a goblet class.
And I looked at it like, I was like, no, that can't be, that can't be. That's the first time I've seen elk here, you know.
Goblet. We're gonna have a detailing class in detailing making class. Shauna's gonna teach it.
Oh, awesome.
Um,
How did her quill working class go? Was that awesome?
yeah, it went good. The quill prep with a real porcupine, we're gonna have that in May. And then the detailing of shells, we're gonna do that in August. Yeah.
I'm doing this really quick so I can pull it off by the end so everybody can kind of see just like.
So some of these guys are South Dakota State University's School of Design.
Yep.
Um,
There's quite a bit actually.
So South Dakota State
Wow.
University students, what are you all majoring, or do you have a minor besides being in School of Design?
I'm majoring in graphic design.
Nice, nice.
Who is the graphic design teacher there now? I think when I was there, it was Randy Clark, I think, or something like that.
Did you tell me you went to school
Yep,
there?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't
cool.
think he's there anymore though.
I don't even know. Technically, I'm still like freshman level, so I haven't got to like the higher levels yet.
Yeah,
We have interior design, another interior design, advertising and design studies.
it's awesome.
One hasn't declared anything, but thinking advertising, interior design, and architecture.
Architecture, it's
Mhm.
awesome.
I just want my outdoor kitchen designed.
Well, definitely stick it out because the first year or so is kind of boring because you got to get through all your generals before you can actually start taking all the classes that you're really engaged in. But if you can dabble a little bit first, to get an idea of what you want to take, that'd be the best, approach because there's so much to offer, especially in the School of Design. Okay. Wonder if they're all online this semester.
Are you guys all online this semester?
Our design classes are mainly in person, but other classes are kind of like hybrid where they're half and half.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I suppose anything that you actually have to work on, you need the space, especially if you're in the dorms.
I also have a question. Are we supposed to be painting with you? Like our professor kind of just made it like a learning thing.
You definitely don't have to. There's people locally that came in and got supplies, so they're all participating in the actual painting process. So you don't have to be painting, but hopefully, if anything, because I know is Elizabeth, right, is your instructor?
Yep.
It's Cassidy.
Yeah. If anything, hopefully you take away some kind of design element or just a deeper understanding of art. And I know it's kind of a crash course really quick. I mean, you got to see a local painting, but hopefully if anything it gets people more aware of different design and different artwork from this area, from South Dakota, from North Dakota. And other than that, I appreciate everybody signing up for the course, taking the course. I hope you learned something, got something out of the course, and hopefully to some degree it influences some of your understandings in the future of art and also art from this area. There's a lot of other courses too on, I know, like beadwork. There's a quill course this last week. And there's so much to offer, which is amazing. When I went to college, there wasn't much for Native American art at all. Came from St. Paul, went to SDSU, got my first teaching job at McLaughlin, and one of the first classes I had to teach was Native American art. So I had to make connections with the community of who the local artists were and had to learn as much as I could so I could, be an effective teacher where I was. So it's definitely something that's important to know about, especially if you're going to teach in the area, to actually have an understanding or somehow bring in the cultural components from the area that you're in. So but other than that, if you're not painting, you can be done for the course, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you sign up for another one. And maybe sometime, especially after COVID and everything, it'd be awesome if could actually get students out here to take the in-class, because some of the stuff that Jen offers here, you're not going to find it anywhere else that I know of, especially around here. So it's really fortunate to have it.
So me and Derek are collaborating, of course, you know that we're collaborating with your School of Design. And so we're hoping to be able to get some local artists in South Dakota within Brookings. And so we're going to be bringing in some artists. And so hopefully be able to have some face-to-face art classes, just kind of be able to kind of see the different kinds of art that is being done in South Dakota by the local. But other than that, we're really looking forward to working with School of Design. And the cool part, you guys are going to design my outdoor kitchen. So and we're going to use art in there. We're going to do all kinds of, it's going to be a multifunctional, I guess this is my dream. I want a multifunctional outdoor kitchen we're gonna cook, we're gonna do medicines, and we're gonna do art. And we're also gonna have like a nice fire pit area. But I want to be able to have Derek do pottery and so forth. So, do an outdoor, because that way we can have more people be able to come in the summertime and bring your own chairs, or we can have our teepees up and so forth. There's a lot of great ideas to the outdoor kitchen. So, and it was a good fit. Talking with South Dakota State University, this is our second year with them now.
Yeah.
We've been in talking, and so we're moving and riding along. Our proposal went through, so yeah, you'll see us through Zoom, but if we're able to come, you'll see more of us coming down to the campus and so forth. And we plan to do some summer trips where you guys can come out here for like the weekend and so forth, and we'll be able to do some art and do some fun things.
Yeah, and here's kind of what it looks like. I rushed the one section, but you can tell what it looks like when you start peeling it off, how clean and crisp. I don't know if Reagan, if you're still on, but even if it dries more, it's going to peel even nicer, but you're going to get really clean, crisp lines like that. If you don't want that undercolor to be white, you'd have to do a coat on the bottom first. And then when that's dry all the way, put your line work up and then paint it. But it gives it a really extremely clean look that you can't really get with a hand brush. And just to mention too, what was mentioned earlier about if some designs, I forgot, I should have said this earlier, about some design patterns that aren't, that you shouldn't use or represent. It depends on what medium it is. So I can't think of any offhand that are like geometric designs or something that you'd find in common beadwork or parfleche patterns. But if you look at like pottery from this area, if there's any pottery artists, and let's say you're going to make a contemporary or a Mandan Hidatsa pot, and you look at old designs from records or museum, or the Culture Heritage Museum in Bismarck, a lot of those designs on top of the pots would have been a family design that would have almost been like intellectual integrity rights to that family. So it would actually bring you to like who the actual people were, almost like a signature, if you will. So things like that, on pottery, there'd be design patterns that, I don't know if, that is still connected all the way but those are an example of like designs that like you shouldn't represent because they belong to somebody else. So if you are making something geometric design patterns, I would consult somebody or do what Reagan's doing and look at things that exist within your family and then represent that on an actual canvas that you could hang up on your wall. That would be amazing. But yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, think about the medium and then you'll have to dive in and learn a little bit more about your medium and what should be, represented versus what shouldn't be represented.
Do the colors you choose symbolize anything?
The colors I chose right now don't. I just rushed so I can kind of show you what it looks like when it peels off. Depending on, what you're trying to represent, what culture. I mean, there's different cultural meanings. If you look at Lakota Dakota culture and you look at like the medicine wheel and you look at those colors, and a lot of times they'll be associated with a direction or a different component like that. They'll have meaning. But that's something that you'll really have to dive in. I'm not an expert with that at all. The colors I used were just colors so I could show you. But if you look at beadwork, I can't remember. I went over the actual colors that would have been, that you would have traditionally seen. But even if you want to even get into even more depth of content, some colors were used just in certain areas, whether it be used primarily for an outline versus like a filler color. I can't think of it offhand, so I don't want to like misspeak about it, but if you really want to go into that kind of depth, some colors would have just been primarily used for like your actual line work and then other colors for your filling in work. And that's going to vary depending on, what tribe and the history and culture, of the area. So yeah, that's a really good question, but mine don't. I just started putting on colors so I can kind of show you guys how to paint it. So does anybody else have any questions? wish I could see everybody because it's like I'm talking to the back of a
An
iPad. So I was like,
iPad.
I don't
There's
know what
nobody
he's doing.
on.
Yeah.
There you go.
so-
1, 2, 3, everybody show yourself. So Derek can see you guys. And then you can flip it around for him. All right,
If anybody will, I don't know.
all right. They're turning them on. Thanks, guys.
I hope you guys enjoyed the class. Thank you for joining. Have fun at SDSU students and everybody else from the area. Show us your paintings because we want to see them, Reagan. So that is awesome. You got it. Reagan's doing a design pattern that was on moccasins from her. It was from your great grandma or grandma?
Yeah, my great grandma. Sorry, my dogs are fighting in the background.
That's cool. Yeah, so you'll be seeing me and Derek down at your campus. We're gonna have fun. We'll do all some cool stuff. We're kind of crazy sometimes, but we're all right. No, kidding.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.